Today, with regard to our vision for the healing of racism and white privilege, I want to share with you a concept from a book that made a profound impact on me in college. The book was titled A Theory of Justice. It was written by philosopher John Rawls. And in it, Rawls suggests that we should imagine that we sit behind a veil of ignorance that keeps us from knowing who we are and that keeps us from identifying with our personal circumstances. So by being behind this veil of ignorance, being ignorant of who we are and our circumstances, we would be able to more objectively consider how our society should operate. So I've never forgotten that. It made such a profound impact on me, and I think it's so relevant to what we're going through right now in our country and in the world regarding racism and white privileges. Because just imagine our societal norms and the laws of our land being made from this veil of ignorance, so that the lawmakers had no idea where they fit in society, what their race, their gender, their political party, their anything about themselves. They would know nothing about themselves. So therefore they would be forced to create laws that were fair to everyone, so that then wherever they wound up being in society, the laws would be fair to them. And I just love that concept, and have no idea how we would ever implement something like that, but I'm willing to dream that it's possible. Because if our laws and our societal norms were made from this veil of ignorance, we would be living in an equal opportunity society with no discrimination against anyone, regardless of their station in life. So Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream, and I know if enough of us share the dream, the walls of discrimination and injustice will come down, just like the Berlin Wall came down when enough people held that in consciousness. So today's message, acceptance and dedication, will support you in taking the last 2 steps into mastermind consciousness, and thereby opening yourself to the field of infinite possibilities. So this is the last in a series of 4 messages based on Unity Minister Jack Boland's 8 steps into the mastermind consciousness. At Unity Santa Fe, we always have to do it different, so we're calling it 8 steps into divine mind consciousness. I know that to the extent that you and I embrace this message by putting feet on it, and the more we align ourselves with our mission, our vision, our mission, our core values, we make a difference in the world. And so that's why we put feet on the message, the meditation, and the music. So let's affirm with great enthusiasm. Even though you're muted, I invite you to enthusiastically affirm. Unity Santa Fe is a welcoming inter-spiritual community that celebrates the oneness and divinity of all creation. Our mission is to raise consciousness, transform lives, heal the planet, one person at a time, beginning with me, beginning with you, each one of us. And our Unity Santa Fe core values are God first, awareness, joy, love, appreciation, and humble surrender. So I celebrate that we truly put feet on this vision, mission, and core values and be the change we want to see in the world. So good for you, good for me. Let's do it. A reminder, same reminder I've given you the past 4 weeks, is that we are in mastermind groups, whether we know it consciously and deliberately or not. And these groups either support us in believing or in not believing. So this message series is about consciously choosing partners and believing in taking the 8 steps into divine mind consciousness. So if it's conscious, we're going to call it divine mind consciousness rather than masterminding. So remember that our lives are a reflection of our consciousness, whether it be our conscious consciousness or our unconscious consciousness. Our dreams literally come true to the level of our consciousness. So we have to build our field of dreams in consciousness first. And then when they are ripe in consciousness, they will be ripe for harvest and will manifest in our lives and in the world. So my purpose today is to support you in taking the last 2 steps into divine mind consciousness, and thereby opening yourselves to the field of infinite possibilities. So this is the last in a series of 4 messages based on Unity Minister Jack Boland's 8 steps into the mastermind consciousness, as he called it. And the human condition is, as I mentioned earlier, we're in these mastermind groups, and we may not be conscious that we are. And so we've got people either maybe not supporting us in our dreams because we're sharing our dreams with people and we're unaware that they're either believing with us or they're not. And so what we want to do as a spiritual solution is to really be in a divine mind circle, to consciously choose our prayer partners and seek out those partners who really are partners in believing for us what we may not be able to believe for ourselves. And us, of course, believing for the others what they may not be able to believe for themselves. So divine mind circles are based on Napoleon Hill's concept of mastermind. And there were several principles. One is that where 2 or more minds work in harmony for the attainment of specific intentions, there is a third invisible force, which he said may be likened to a third mind. He called it mastermind, we call it divine mind. And that the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to everyone in the group. So I like to share with you, as I've done previous weeks, what Jesus said in Matthew 18 in the context of steps into the divine mind consciousness. He said, "Assuredly I say to you, whatever you bind in human mind is bound in divine mind. And whatever you loose or let go of in human mind is also let go of in divine mind." He said, "Again, I say to you that if 2 of you agree in human mind concerning anything you ask, it will be done for you by divine mind." So we want to be in conscious divine mind circles. We want to deliberately, consciously choose our partners in believing. So the last 3 weeks, I've gone over 2 steps into the divine mind consciousness per week. And the first 6 steps that I've already gone over, this is a refresher. The first step is I surrender. I admit that I cannot manifest my highest good or successfully meet life's challenges with my intelligence and human efforts alone. I need the help of my divine nature. I need the help of my divinity. The second step is I believe. I believe by listening to and following my divine nature's voice of peace, wisdom, and love within me, my divine nature significantly raises my consciousness and transforms my life for my highest good. The third step, I am ready to be changed. I realize that distress and discontent in my life result when I listen to my ego's false messages of lack, fear, and separation. Messages based on error thinking, error beliefs, and error attitudes. I am ready to have my divine nature overrule my ego so I live in peace, wisdom, and love. The fourth step is I decide to be changed. So we step in the fourth step beyond the surrender to our human powerless, where we decide, we make a decision and fully surrender my will and my life to my divine nature, allowing it to change me at depth. The sixth step, I forgive. I see the perfection in all my past thoughts and actions, even those I may have seen as mistakes and shortcomings. I also see the perfection, light, and innocence in anyone whom I may have thought has harmed me. For I know my true self, my divine nature cannot be harmed in any way. The seventh step is I ask. The sixth step. Speaking from the voice of my divine nature, I now make known my specific request, asking my prayer partner's support in knowing my divine nature is responding to my request in the right and perfect ways and time for my highest good. So today, we're going to wrap it up with the seventh and eighth steps into divine mind consciousness. The seventh step is I give thanks. I give thanks for all the blessings I have already received, for the blessings I am certain are yet to come, and for the grace and inspiration that I am continually receiving that blesses my life at its very core. I give thanks my divine nature is perfectly responding to my request, and I feel this gratitude in every cell and atom of my being, knowing that my requests are already fulfilled. And the eighth step, I dedicate my life. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source, and my consciousness of my divine nature is continually supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to all creation, to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others to follow, and to remain open and receptive to divine guidance and will. I go forth radiating feelings of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. I am at peace. So let's look at the seventh and eighth steps more deeply. And so I'd like to break this step down into chewable parts. You know, if you got to eat an elephant, which I would never do as a vegan, you know, you have to do it one bite at a time. So here it is. I give thanks for all the blessings I have already received. And I think most of us are used to giving thanks for the blessings we have already received. But the next part is, I give thanks for all the blessings I am certain are yet to come. Not I hope will come. I am certain will come. So how many of us give thanks for the blessings yet to come? How many of us give thanks for the blessings we are certain are yet to come? And then I give thanks for the grace and inspiration that I am continually receiving that blesses my life at its very core. So how many of us give thanks for the grace and inspiration that we are continually receiving that blesses our lives to the very core? How many of us are giving thanks to our divine nature, knowing that it is perfectly responding to our request? How many of us are feeling this gratitude in every cell and atom of our being, knowing that our requests are already fulfilled? So, the part I'd like to focus on first is giving thanks in advance for the blessings we are certain are yet to come. You know, Jesus is our model, our elder brother, our way shower. And he modeled for us giving thanks in advance. Just a couple of examples. Before he called Lazarus from the tomb, he looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." No, gee, I hope you're listening, God, but I give thanks that you have heard me. And then before he multiplied the loaves and fishes, he took them and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves and fed the 5,000 from these 5 loaves and 2 fishes, whatever it was. So thanking God, we have to realize after we've already received something, that's gratitude, and that's wonderful that we do it. But thanking God in advance is what I call faith. Giving thanks in advance is putting feet on our faith. It's putting the power of the word on our faith. And our faith, in his words, he said, "So I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer," and remember we talked about asking last week, meaning to claim. Whatever you claim in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Not it might be yours, maybe if God's having a good hair day, but no, it will be yours. So if Jesus thought it was important enough to thank God before the answer came, then I think we need to get in the habit of not only asking, claiming, making our requests known, but taking it one step further and giving thanks in advance, even when we don't see any sign of it happening. Really having faith that it's happening right now. And about this idea of giving thanks for the grace and inspiration that we were continually receiving that blesses our lives at their very core, think about it. The unearned, freely given grace that we don't even have to ask for. It's ours. It's all we have to do is put ourselves in the flow of grace. And that inspiration that we receive from out of the blue, the gut feelings that tell us yes or no, that's the grace and inspiration. And what about those things we take for granted? Water, food, shelter, transportation, our autonomic nervous system that breathes us and circulates our blood and life force every moment of every day. It's important to also give thanks for those things. And then that last part, giving thanks, knowing our divine nature is perfectly responding to our request and feeling gratitude in every cell and atom of our being, knowing that our requests are already filled. So that's where it's important to understand the word know in the Middle Eastern sense of the word means that I know that I know that I know. Nobody can argue it with me. I know it in every cell of my body, my heart, my soul, my mind. I know. And that's the sense that we're talking about in this part of the step. So Rich Warren says that faith is not believing God can do something. Faith is not hoping God will do something. Faith is thanking God in advance. So I say faith is knowing, in the Middle Eastern sense of the word to know, our requests are already fulfilled. It's already done. It's done on a spiritual level. But if we just leave it up there, we need to have that faith that brings it into manifestation. So again, let's hear the whole step. I give thanks. I give thanks for all the blessings I have already received, for the blessings I am certain are yet to come, and for the grace and inspiration that I am continually receiving that blesses my life at its very core. I give thanks that my divine nature is perfectly responding to my request. And I feel this gratitude in every cell and atom of my being, knowing that my requests are already fulfilled. So I give thanks. I give thanks not only for my personal requests, but I give thanks for the dream I am certain is yet to come. And I feel gratitude in every cell and atom of my being, knowing that racial justice and white supremacy and white privilege is already healed on the spiritual plane, and giving thanks in advance that it is manifesting on the physical plane this very moment. So that's what it means to give thanks in this step into the master or divine mind consciousness. The 8th step into divine mind consciousness is I dedicate my life. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source, and my consciousness of my divine nature is continually supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to all creation, to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others, and to remain open and receptive to divine guidance and will. I go forth radiating feelings of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. I am at peace. So again, let's break it down into chewable parts. The first part, I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source. Not me of my human nature, but my divine nature is my source. Divine nature is that divine substance that underlies all that is. So I have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source. Second part, and my consciousness of my divine nature is my supply. The way it says it is, my consciousness of my divine nature is continually supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. Again, all things necessary. It's being continually providing. It is mine for the asking. It is mine for the claiming. To the level of my consciousness, it is done. Then, so that's sort of establishing the agreement of what my divine nature does for me. But then we go to the next step, which is what I will receive. In a covenant, you have an expectation in what you receive, as well as what you're willing to give. And so we receive, because we've agreed that divine nature is our source and that our consciousness of our divine nature is supplying us with all things. So in return for that, what I'm going to give, I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to all creation. Not just to those I care about, not just to those people close to me, but to all creation, not just people, all sentient beings, Mother Earth itself. And the other thing, I agree to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others to follow. We hear the saying, what would Jesus do? Well, put your name in the place of Jesus. So I would say, what people would say, wow, what would Brendalyn do? Or what would Tom do? Or what would Sylvia do? Wouldn't that be great if you were setting such a high example and I were setting such a high example that when people wanted to make sure they were doing the right thing, they would ask, wow, what would they do? And we agree to remain open and responsive to divine guidance and will. Not to my ego's fears and willfulness, but I am open and responsive to divine guidance and divine will. And then I go forth radiating feelings of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. And why do I do that? How do I do that? It's because I'm going forth in faith. I'm knowing it is done on the spiritual plane already. And finally, I am at peace. I know all is well. So I am at peace. And to me, that's, I say that faith is what, or joy is what faith feels like. And so when I know all is well, then that's faith. That's faith. Now, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who are the co-founders of the Unity Movement, made a dedication and covenant. It was dated December 7th, 1891, and it wasn't discovered till 1942 among their papers that people had not yet gone through. And I want you to notice how it includes what they will do and what they know will be the result. It reads, we, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, husband and wife, hereby dedicate ourselves, our time, our money, all we have and all we expect to have, to the spirit of truth, and through it to the society of silent unity. It being understood and agreed that the said spirit of truth shall render unto us an equivalent for this dedication in peace of mind, health of body, wisdom, understanding, love, life, and an abundant supply of all things necessary to meet every want, without our making any of these things the object of our existence. In the presence of the conscious mind of Christ Jesus, this 7th day of December, AD 1892. And it was signed by Charles Fillmore and by Myrtle Fillmore. So the Fillmores used this dedication and covenant to guide them in everything they did and to guide the unfolding, the growth, the expansion of the Unity movement. So I invite each of us to use either the 8-step divine mind dedication and covenant or to create our own using the 8-step into divine mind consciousness and the Fillmore's dedication and covenant to create our own and to allow this covenant to guide us in our lives. So again, I want to read the 8th-step into divine mind consciousness. I dedicate my life. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source, and my consciousness of my divine nature is continuously supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to all creation, to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others to follow, and to remain open and responsive to divine guidance and will. I go forth radiating feelings of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. I am at peace. Wow. So how do we take these steps into mastermind consciousness? Well, all 8 steps really are part of a prayer process. So it's about prayer and meditation. You know, I'm in, I do the Wednesday night, we're doing a Divine Mind circles in the Wednesday night class if you want an opportunity to really experience it. But I also have a group of friends that I'm doing a group of partners in believing that I'm doing another Divine Mind Circle with. And we go so deep, and it's like the whole energy of the Zoom call changes when we go through these 8 steps. We indeed go into an altered state of consciousness, which I can't tell you about. You have to experience it yourself. So during our prayer and meditation, we want to particularly focus on prayers of thanksgiving for not only what we've received, but what we don't even remember we've received, and to ask in advance. And we also, I really invite you to consider adopting that 8-step dedication and covenant as your own, or as a model, using it and the Fillmores to model how you can create your own personal dedication and covenant. So over 100 years ago, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore began planting the seeds for the Unity movement. And they did so by meeting with like-minded individuals to pray for themselves and others. So I encourage each one of you and myself, I re-encourage myself to jump on board and enthusiastically choose to collectively make a difference by being love in action in a Divine Mind Circle. It's an opportunity to open your heart and mind to inner guidance, to pray with others, experience the power of group prayer, to support, nourish, and inspire others to be all they can be, and to be supported, nourished, and inspired to be all you can be. And some other just little hints. Think twice before you speak, because your words and influence will plant the seed of either success or failure in the mind of another. And if you are white, honor your brothers and sisters of color by giving racial justice and white privilege a deeper meaning for yourself, by educating yourself on what our brothers and sisters of color are going through and how we can support them. And then have faith in the dream of racial justice and the dismantling of white privilege. So each Sunday of this series, I open the message by saying our lives are a reflection of our consciousness, whether it be conscious consciousness or unconscious consciousness. Each week of this series, I have said, white privilege is a reflection of the consciousness of our country, whether it be our conscious consciousness or our unconscious consciousness. And I celebrate our willingness to raise our consciousness by being conscious of racism and white privilege, and by being part of dismantling racism and white privilege, one person at a time, beginning with me. And I celebrate us taking this willingness to raise our consciousness by being part of a Unity Santa Fe Divine Mind Circle. And let's begin doing that right now by being one together in a sacred time of shared prayer. And so I invite us to relax the body, quiet the mind, and open the heart. As I read these 8 steps into Divine Mind Consciousness, and I want you to hear these words as your words. Hear these words spoken through my voice as your voice, as your words. I surrender. I admit that I cannot manifest my highest good or successfully meet life's challenges with my intelligence and human efforts alone. I need the help of my divine nature. I believe. I believe that by listening to and following my divine nature's voice of peace, wisdom, and love within me, my divine nature significantly raises my consciousness and transforms my life for my highest good. I am ready to be changed. I realize that distress and discontent in my life result when I listen to my ego's false messages of lack, fear, and separation. Messages based on error thinking, error beliefs, and error attitudes. I am ready to have my divine nature overrule my ego. So I live in peace, wisdom, and love. I decide to be changed. I make a decision and fully surrender my will and my life to my divine nature, allowing it to change me at depth. I forgive. I see the perfection in all my past thoughts and actions, even those I may have seen as mistakes and shortcomings. I also see the perfection, light, and innocence in anyone whom I may have thought has harmed me. For I know my true self, my divine nature, cannot be harmed in any way. I ask, and I invite you as I finish reading this step to make a request, because we are all a divine mind circle. Speaking from the voice of my divine nature, I now make known my specific request, asking my prayer partner's support in knowing my divine nature is responding to my request in the right and perfect ways and time for my highest good. I give thanks. I give thanks for all the blessings I have already received, for the blessings I am certain are yet to come, and for the grace and inspiration that I am continually receiving that blesses my life at its very core. I give thanks. My divine nature is perfectly responding to my request, and I feel this gratitude in every cell and atom of my being, knowing that my requests are already fulfilled. I dedicate my life. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that my divine nature is my source, and my consciousness of my divine nature is continually supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to all creation, to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others, and to remain open and receptive to divine guidance and will. I go forth radiating feelings of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. I am at peace in the silence. As we bring our attention back to this time and place, silently say, thank you, divine nature that is my essence, for the courage and wisdom to take my prayers of thanks to a higher level and to structure my life in alignment with a conscious dedication and covenant. Thank you, divine nature I am. Thank you, thank you, thank you, that it is so, and so it is. Amen.